Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in here. As we are officially about halfway through the college football season, I wanted to go over the current predictions for all of the conference championship games and then look at some of the bowl predictions at the end of the season. Also, take a look at where the betting money is going on in some of the bigger games like Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama, Tennessee, and so on. But we begin. You can take a look at this nice analytical graph that gives you each Power 5 conference and the chances of the top team at making their conference championship game. And it also gives you a potential spread between the two teams. So we're just going to go from left to right, starting with the ACC. You can see right now FSU, they've got a stranglehold, 92% chance to make the ACC championship. They're undefeated currently. They've had some wobbly games like the game against Boston College, but you look at their schedule. They have Duke this week with probably an injured Riley Leonard. Yeah, I like FSU very easily to make their conference championship as long as they don't trip up. They're going to be favorites to make the playoff. I will say if they lose in the ACC Conference Championship, they are out because it would just be I don't want to say that completely, but it would be very surprising. The only way they could lose in the ACC Championship is if North Carolina goes undefeated and LSU goes undefeated because they would have a win against LSU, who would be the SEC champion. And their only loss would be against an undefeated North Carolina team. Then maybe two teams from the ACC could get in, but it's very unlikely. And then you can see North Carolina, a 59% chance. They move in front of Louisville after that brutal loss that Louisville suffered last week. The spread in that game looks like FSU minus a touchdown to -8. Moving on to the Big 12, you've got Oklahoma, a virtual lock, sitting at 97% chance. The Big 12 this year outside of Texas and Oklahoma, it is not a good conference, so that's why that number is so high. They already have the head-to-head over Texas, and then you can see Texas sitting with around a 65% chance at this point. Even after their loss to Oklahoma, their odds didn't go down too much because, again, there's no extremely tough games left on the schedule for Texas. Just because the Big 12 is not very good, this is going to come down to probably a big issue because in the event Texas beats Oklahoma, there's going to be a lot of Oklahoma fans saying, we only have one loss. The team that we lost to in the Big 12 championship, we beat. So this could be a problem. I do think for Oklahoma, based on how bad their schedule is, unfortunately, if they lose to Texas in a rematch, unless it's like something crazy where it's like 51-48, like if they lose by a touchdown, I don't see them making it because they just don't have good enough wins. I know they have the win against Texas, but they would also lose to Texas. They would not be a conference champion, and they have no like crazy good other wins outside of that Texas win. Obviously, if Oklahoma beats Texas again, Oklahoma's in the playoff. Texas is not. Moving on to the Big Ten, you can see Ohio State. It's basically a three-way tie right now with Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. They all have around a 33% chance. The Buckeyes would be around minus 19-point favorites against Iowa in a rare Big Ten championship matchup. I don't think those teams have ever matched up in the Big Ten championship, but Iowa sitting at a 63% chance. Certainly, I think Iowa's going to lose to someone. Like, I know they have an easy remaining schedule because it's the Big Ten West, and they don't face Ohio State or Michigan in the regular season, but their offense is just so bad. They could easily lose to Illinois. They could lose to Nebraska at the end of the season in the rivalry game on the road. I know people are like trying to say, what if Iowa finishes with one loss? I just don't see it happening. They've got too bad of an offense, and it's not like the Big Ten West is full of Division II teams. I mean, they have teams to where, Illinois could very easily beat Iowa again. So I see Iowa at least losing one more game. The problem for Wisconsin is if they want to go to the Big Ten championship, they are going to have to beat Ohio State, and I just don't see that happening at all. So they have a tougher schedule, and you can see it's just tough right now with the Big Ten West. We're ready to get rid of it, but it is still here for this year. So it's going to be Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan, very likely taking on Iowa, unless some other Big Ten West team makes a crazy run. Looking at the Pac-12, this would basically be best case scenario for the Pac-12. You would have an undefeated Washington in a rematch against a one-loss Oregon, and then imagine if Oregon wins this game, Washington would have a big case to possibly make the playoff because of how tough the Pac-12 is. Washington would have big wins against Oregon. They would also have a win against USC. They would also have a win, I believe, against Oregon State. So, this will be interesting for the Pac 12, possibly getting two teams in the playoff. Now, it does have to fall right. These teams have to rematch, and Oregon would have to win in a close game. You can see the spread 1.5, like a pick 'em. Not surprising at all, but yeah, we'll see what happens with the Pac 12. USC, we certainly expect to be completely out. They already have a loss, and they're expected to get a few Pac 12 losses. Remember that loss that they have, it's out of conference against Notre Dame. They're still undefeated in the Pac 12. That's mainly because they haven't faced anyone good in the Pac-12. And then moving on to the SEC, you can see right now, how about that? It's a pick-em between Georgia and Bama because of how bad Georgia has been analytically. They're sitting just 1-6 against the spread. They lose their superstar tight end. I'm down on Georgia right now. I really am. And Alabama, they're a real kind of strange team this year. Alabama and Ohio State are very similar. We're so used to Alabama and Ohio State dominating everyone, and this year, I guess it's a little bit more extreme with Alabama, but both of those teams, Ohio State almost loses to Notre Dame, Alabama loses to Texas, both of them really not blowing out opponents. I guess Ohio State did blow out Purdue, but it's just kind of strange to see them play closer games. They end up beating Arkansas by 3. And I definitely see them losing again. You could see LSU possibly beating Alabama, but LSU has to go to Tuscaloosa. Either way, I think all those SEC teams are fraudulent. I would guess that Georgia makes the playoff, but let me just say, if Brock Bowers is out for the year, and Georgia loses in the SEC championship and finishes 12-1, they're out. They're done. They didn't have a good enough schedule. I'm sorry. It is what it is. Moving on to the group of 5, we're just going to run through these really quickly. So the analytics love SMU. Like, SMU is thought of more highly than Tulane. And every normal person, the common people, are going to think Tulane, they're ranked, they must be better. No, you can see a neutral field, SMU sitting -4. SMU had that tough non-conference game against Oklahoma that is kind of weighing them down from being ranked. You can see Liberty versus Western Kentucky in Conference USA. Conference USA this year is horrible. Moving on to the MAC, how about Miami of Ohio taking over the spot from Ohio, possibly facing Toledo, but both of those teams only with a 60 and 61% chance to make it, so we might get a completely different MAC championship. Moving on to the Mountain West, you do have Air Force. That's the team we're watching from the group of 5. They are unbeaten. They're sitting -5.5 right now in a potential game against Fresno State, although Fresno State only a 41% chance to make it. You do have other teams potentially in there, like a Boise State, Air Force with a 90% chance to make it. They would be around -5.5 in that one. And then moving on to the SBC, the Sun Belt, you can see Troy with a 51% chance. And then the other team, it's really a revolving door. You've got Appalachian State, you've got Georgia Southern, and you do have South Alabama with also Coastal Carolina possibly in there as well. Now, when it comes to the actual bowl predictions, I saw this and I wanted to share it. Just taking a look at the potential playoff, this is very spread out. So you've got one Big Ten team, one Pac-12 team, one SEC team, and one ACC team. Michigan sitting basically in a pick-em, -1.5 in the Rose Bowl against Washington. I'm guessing that's the 2v3 matchup, or is that 1v? Yeah, I'm guessing that's 2. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say because these teams are undefeated. It's hard to rank them. But then you've got Georgia sitting -4.5 over Florida State. I would say Michigan may not make it just because they have Ohio State and Penn State. Penn State game being on the road. Washington, certainly they're set up to make it. If I was predicting today, they would be in. Just predicting throughout the end of the season, And then you do have Georgia. I don't think Georgia's making it. I think they'll lose, especially even if they lose in the SEC championship, they're not making it, even if that's their only loss. And then you do have Florida State. Certainly Florida State, they're going to have a few tough games, but they've already faced Clemson on the road. Even in a potential ACC championship game against North Carolina, I have not been fond on North Carolina, so I'm really not thinking that Florida State's going to lose that game. I think they probably enter the playoff undefeated, but they are certainly beatable. Moving on to the Fiesta Bowl, you can see Oregon would be sitting -16.5 versus Air Force. This is where we kind of get annoyed because you could be looking at Bo Nix potentially not playing in this game depending on his draft, although I would expect him to play considering he seems like a college football kind of, guy. But either way, Air Force in that game, that would be tough for them. But it would be cool to see them for sure, a new team, make it. Oklahoma and Alabama. Bama sitting -1.5 in that one. Basically a pick 'em for that. Moving on to the Orange Bowl, you can see North Carolina taking on Penn State. Penn State listed as 8-point favorites. And then the Cotton Bowl, Ohio State taking on Texas. That would be a nice matchup. The Buckeyes sitting -2.5 in that hypothetical matchup. And then looking at the smart money, the best bets here on Penn State at Ohio State. This is the game we're watching, and we have seen significant line movement in this one. A lot of people betting on Penn State. The line originally opened -5. It's down a full point to -4.5. A lot of people going in on the under 46.5, under 47 as well. That's been bet down a little bit. So looks like I will say right now the smart money is on Penn State, even plus the 4. Not great value considering it's been bet down, but I do like this game to be extremely close. Tennessee at Alabama. You could see most money going in on Tennessee. I will actually take Bama in this game. I think Bama wins and covers just because of the way Tennessee is just not complete this year, and you can say the same thing about Alabama, but Alabama does this thing where they'll cover one week, and then they'll not cover the next week, and then they'll cover. Alabama just has an amazing defensive line, and Tennessee can't throw. Joe Milton has not been good this year, so I'll take Alabama in that one. And then the rivalry game, it is Michigan versus Michigan State. A lot of money coming in on Michigan State to cover. I'm guessing they're thinking Michigan State's at home. It's a 7:30 night game, prime time on NBC. You can kind of understand it, but I think I have this game at 34-10, so the under, but Michigan's just way more talented than Michigan State. This could be a game where it's like 7-3 after the first quarter, and the fans are energized, and then Michigan just blows them out. That's what I would expect from a game like that. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.